Well, good morning, fellow chairmen, and to everyone listening or watching online. This is going to be a fun topic that we're going to chat about today, and it's going to be on the topic of post NAMM. So pre-pandemic type of NAMM, post-pandemic. I just went to NAMM. I just got back. I survived. I did not get sick or anything, as I've heard the rumors would say from all the craziness. So I'm excited to talk with you, Mason, today about just like, our experiences and, talk about the stuff that I saw and our feelings about NAMM. And because I know we did a video on it a while ago and we kind of said, is NAMM, is it still a thing? So it's going to be a fun topic. But how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. And greetings to wherever you are, morning, noon, or night, whatever time zone you celebrate. We're here for you in the world of tone. And as you said, Brian, I definitely have an opinion about NAMM. And I don't know that it's a unique opinion or hot take about NAMM, but nevertheless, I don't want to spoil anybody's enjoyment of the show should they enjoy partaking and experiencing the show floor. God bless if you dig it. That's up to the individual. But, I'm sure as we get more into the conversation, if you're not already aware of my perspective on this, it will definitely be fleshed out.
For sure. Well, I think it's best to start off with kind of like, when was the last NAMM that you went to? Because we were talking about this a little bit prior.
Yeah.
And because obviously my first NAMM experience was like back in like 2014, 2015. And being a 20-something-year-old being told there's all sorts of these crazy things, you have all these expectations, and then you get there and there's just so much going on. It's kind of like a sensory overload, kind of in a way, because there's just so much stuff. I'd be curious to know, I guess, when did you start going and when did you stop going?
I think the first NAMM show that I ever did as demonstrating.
Yeah.
This is not as a spectator. I think it was 2011 because I have this remembrance of the slogan of NAMM being "Take it to 11."
Oh my gosh.
And so I think 2011 was the first year. And I think the last year I did it was 2019. So I did it for eight years.
Long time.
Yeah. And then I think the last time I attended but didn't exhibit was 2020. It was like we just started hearing about the coronavirus.
Yeah.
And post NAMM show, like 2 months later, everything went into lockdown.
Yeah.
So I guess that this will be the third NAMM I haven't been to subsequently. I think that's right. Because they've done some sort of intermediary NAMMs or abbreviated NAMMs in some format since then. So I think I've missed 3 of the Anaheim ones. And I don't know how many of the Nashville have occurred in that time.
I want to say after COVID, they haven't done any Nashvilles, if I can remember.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but from what I asked the guys at NAMM, a couple of people were like, oh yeah, they don't do a summer NAMM anymore.
Okay.
And I was like, oh wow, okay. But yeah, my whole first time for NAMM was the same thing. I was with the Jackson Ampworks crew. So back in 2015, we went, and Anaheim was the first one, and it was like, a 10x10 small little corner booth. There was 6 or 7 of us there. We definitely worked like 4 weeks straight together, so we were already kind of like at our wits' end with each other, just because trying to get production stuff done and showing display stuff done. And I will say, going and working a booth at NAMM versus attending are 2 significantly different things. They are like, I went this year on a whim because I thought it'd be fun to get some video content and see some friends and kind of just see what's new. And it was nicer to not have to be tied to a booth, and especially within an hour of me being there, finding out how quickly it made sense that I lost my voice just because of how loud it is in the rooms. Even with the tone police walking around, or the volume police, or whatever they call it.
You can't have good tone. No, you can't have good tone here. You will be arrested.
Literally, I saw people walking around with like dB meters on their phone, and I think that's why they call it the tone police, because the level of the volume in which they want you to turn down. You're like, how am I supposed to adequately test this pedal or this amp if it's at 1?
I always thought they just referred to them as the volume police.
Oh, volume police, that's a good one too.
But the tone police, I think is more interesting.
You
shall not have good tone.
Shall not.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like in 2015, amp cab sim pedals weren't as much of a thing. Maybe like load box IR, like maybe the Oxbox style stuff was, but not like it is now. So like going this year was nice because, thank the Lord, they put all of the drummers, and this is no offense to any drummer, if you're a drummer listening to a Chairman of the Boards episode, that they put all the drummers in their own hall. So it was just one loud thing over there.
They put them in a separate hall, or they just isolated them to a certain area of the hall? Because my understanding is that everything now is Hall D, which is kind of the primary floor.
So it was Hall A through D. So like Hall A was DJ, in-ear monitor stuff.
Okay, but it's all one level in
yeah,
words.
Yeah, it was all one level, and it was all separated by the walls, which was handy because like being in the D section where it was like all guitars and pedals and amps and stuff, it was significantly different when you moved over to the C area, because that's where the drums were.
Because in the old days, it used to be where you had where there was tiers, so you had like the main floor, and then you had the basement area, which was, I think, slightly cheaper, and then you had some of the bigger brands that would be on floors that were above the main floor. So you had to take an escalator up, and those would be like the Fenders, the Gibsons, the PRS, none of whom showed at the show.
Correct.
So okay, I'm following. Sorry, continue.
Yes. No, you're good. No. So like the main floor, they were categorized basically A, B, C, D. The basement, or the bottom level underneath the main floor, wasn't even open. No one was even down there. And then you went up one escalator. I want to say
usually like Line 6 or Yamaha can be on those.
Yamaha, that's what it was. Because I know that they had a whole room. And then the very top floor, like I only had one day there, so I was kind of moving fast throughout everything. The very top floor is a lot of like the sessions where they would do like the speaker Q&A kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which was really cool. I got to sit in on one of those and listen. But it was interesting not to see a lot of companies not be there, especially companies that just have come out with releases. But it makes sense because some of these manufacturers are in California. So like, Duesenberg wasn't there, but Duesenberg just released a new Jolie Landreth guitar. So I was looking for the booth, and like, oh, they don't have a booth. They basically just had a party Friday night in their showroom. So they had a bunch of people there, and they showed off the thing. So like that was for their NAMM type of thing, but they didn't have to go and pay for a booth, and because it's so much money. Boss last minute decided to have a booth. I was talking to my guy at Boss, and I was like, I thought you guys weren't going to be here. And he's like, yeah, a week and a half ago, our guy came to me and said, do we want to do NAMM? And we're like, if we're going to do it, we better figure out right now. And they had a small, like, they had the type of thing, it was like, it was 4 booths in one, like four 10x10s and
Yep.
one or whatever. That whole bubble section for putting together last minute. They sure had a nice booth, which was really cool. And yeah, it was interesting to see. I don't know if you saw the photos. Neural, has you
Yeah, it
happened
kind
to
of
see
had
Neural's
like
booth?
they had like just like some lettering that said soon.
Yes.
And I think it's something, we can't talk about fully yet, but they've kind of been letting us know behind the scenes about kind of what's coming around the horizon here pretty soon, and I think it should be something really cool that that I think will get more people in the door of their kind of framework.
Yeah, it was. What's crazy about it
It's very provocative.
before NAMM, all I saw was photos of people screenshotting that. And they were just big foam letters that said soon. So, like, those were maybe $100 worth of foam letters. But their
But
booth
I bet you they still had to
was-
pay for a 10x10 or whatever it was to.
that booth space, I kid you not, was like 10 booths in one. 10 by it was nuts. Some people online tried to speculate how much the booth cost and how much this, like, they were trying to like figure it out. But if they were trying to make a point in NAMM, they did, because people are like, wow, you paid all that money for that booth space to have
I'm sure that they.
it was
I'm
a
sure
booth.
that they. I'm sure they had something abbreviated. Well, but it was just on the concrete, right? There's no carpet. There's no
Nothing. It was just concrete. Yeah, and it said the booth number. Like, it was an official booth.
I mean, it'll definitely be less because, like, you have to. It's so funny for those of you who are unfamiliar with the logistics of NAMM from a demonstrator, exhibitor standpoint. Everything costs. So, like,
Everything.
for the privilege of unloading your booth, you have to pay their unionized labor to remove the booth from your vehicle and to install it. And then you have to have their carpet team install the carpet. And you have to have their cleaners clean the carpet. You can't bring your own vacuum. You have to use their cleaning crew, and that comes at an expense. You want them to take out your garbage. You have to pay for that privilege. So everything is an add-on.
Internet, everything.
And you multiply that across 4 days, you can be spending thousands, even on a 10x10 booth, to kind of have the privilege of having carpet, of having it cleaned, of having your garbage taken out at the end of each day. These are all things that are not rolled into the cost of the booth. The cost of the booth is physically just the 10x10 space and the masking tape that they use to divide yours from the booth next to you.
Yep.
That's the basic cost, and then everything else is additional. And so it's. We can get into this more later, but I think that there's a really stark perspective difference between people who attend NAMM or artists that attend NAMM on behalf of a brand, or people that are speaking at NAMM versus somebody who is an exhibitor at NAMM.
Yeah.
And I think the experiences are very different, and it seems like NAMM's biggest advocates are not the exhibitors. It's the periphery. And I want to talk more about that because I think it's an important acknowledgement that I still feel like, even from when we've talked about this from last year, is still largely unaddressed by NAMM. Like, the cost is really high for the exhibitor. The amount that they have to make up as a consequence of showing at the NAMM show is pretty large, and they don't have a lot of markers to tell them the value of the show, even amongst the biggest brands. And so, to me, the NAMM is not delivering on the cost to the exhibitor to put on an exhibit at the NAMM show. NAMM is not making it worth their while. I think in the 80s and 90s, it was absolutely the way to do it because there were no other ways to put out your product. And this is a huge epicenter for trade to occur. I don't believe a lot of trade happens anymore, and we'll get into the reasons why. But before I do, I want to talk about a few of our sponsors that make the podcast possible. The first of which are friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary. If you've been perusing Instagram and YouTube and you've been seeing all the influencers posting about all this cool new gear that's at NAMM, it's very likely, and in fact probable, that our friends over at the Guitar Sanctuary have those very products in stock. All the new latest and greatest stuff, whether you're talking about pedals, amps, and guitars, are all available at theguitarsanctuary.com. Head over there, check out their inventory on their website, or go there in person in McKinney, Texas. Tell them the chairman sent you, and check out all the great wares that they have. Secondly, our friends over at Neural DSP, arguably the most provocative booth in all of the NAMM show, that just had foam letters that said soon with a Neural DSP logo. They are offering our listeners a special discount code for 30% off all of their plugins. You heard that right, 30% off every single plugin that's available on the Neural DSP website, except for new releases, which will be available after 90 days. Go to neuraldsp.com, use the coupon code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, and immediately get 30% off. Also, just want to mention quickly that you can now edit your Quad Cortex on your computer. Their editing suite is fully complete. It has been taken out of its beta form, and it is amazing to use, gives you even more ability to tweak and to tweeze and to modify all of those things that you love about your Quad Cortex. I've already been using it. I love it as a workflow tool. I use the Quad Cortex every single week. I love what it gets for what it does. There is nothing else like it. And I'm very impressed with the amp models. We've got an episode about it where I play some and kind of compare it to some other classic amps and pedals that I have. So do check that out. Go over to neuraldsp.com and use the coupon code Chairman, get 30% off their plugins. Lastly, our friends over at Sweetwater have an amazing program called the Gear Exchange, and it is an amazing way to sell your used gear and maintain 100% of your profits. Now, I'm just going to show you something cool if you're watching right now.
There it is.
So my most recent Gear Exchange purchase, or I should say a consequence of the Gear Exchange, has been this Gretsch Smoke Brian Setzer. Absolutely amazing guitar. Found it for, it has 7 pounds, I think it's 7 pounds, 2 ounces, super lightweight Gretsch. And the amazing thing about it is I was able to sell stuff that I wasn't using, stuff that's been sitting around my office or our showroom. I was able to get money for it. And if I put it on a Sweetwater gift card, I don't have to pay any fees. So it's a great way for me to maintain 100% of my earnings and be able to apply that to something that I was already interested in buying from Sweetwater. So I was able to take all those earnings. I was able to pay for this guitar completely without having to pay a dime out of pocket, and was able to get to that figure even faster because I'm not having to give away 10% every time I want to, pull the money out and keep it as cash. So great way to maintain 100% of your profits. Just get to that item that you're already interested in buying a little bit faster. Head over to sweetwater.com/used. You start an account for free. You can pick up an amazing guitar like Smoke right here, the Brian Setzer. My very first Gretsch, just lost my G card. So love the Sweetwater Gear Exchange. I feel like it's the only way to go. So head over to sweetwater.com/use. That's Sweetwater Gear Exchange. And those are the first group of our sponsors. So let's get back to NAMM. Let me put back my Gretsch.
Yeah. Well, I think something to mention too, and this is something that I didn't really realize happened, is even before NAMM, what's cool about it is that there'll be like groups a bunch of my friends, the worship tutorial guys, they all like do like a whole like hangout thing pre-NAMM. So like that's the cool thing is I like about NAMM from an attendee position is that like you have the opportunity to go and hang out, go to all these different concerts. I mean, the whole strip was set up significantly different this year. They had a lot of like fencing and stuff. but like the hotels had, concerts going on. Andy Timmons performed Saturday night. All these different guys performed all these other nights. And it was cool to see, not like also to mention like a lot of these artists that were there, like they were performing in the booth and stuff, but a lot of them were just like there helping at some of those booths. So like Sean Tubbs was there at the Rev booth, and I was like, oh, that's cool. How long is he here? And they're like, oh no, he's been here the whole week. So it was a cool like thing to get to see him integrate like with people.
Well, I mean, I think I'm sure he's paid to be there. I'm sure it's not just out
so
of the kindness of his heart.
So he's on staff as like their media guy. But I was like, oh, that's cool. I don't typically see like Drew Shirley who was in Switchfoot and all these other guys show up, and usually like Mateos, like a lot of those guys they were there, they were just walking around. But it was cool to see a lot of them, like you said, pay them to be there, but like they were hanging out more than normal. Usually those guys will just kind of walk around, put a baseball cap on because they just want to look at gear and stuff. But it wasn't as much of like, they said it was more chaotic on the first day, the Thursday, than it was like I went on Saturday and partial Sunday, and Saturday and Sunday was nothing. Like not nothing, but there was people there, but it wasn't like going to Disney World where you're scrunching through. I go to Disney a lot with my family, so the whole like squeezing around people, like people like, yeah, that's what it's like on Saturdays and Sundays at NAMM, which it wasn't really crazy, which was really cool because it was. I think maybe as some people I asked a couple of the booths, like Eventide, they're like, it feels smaller this year, but like we still have a nice flow of people. So yeah, it's cool to get that opportunity from an attendee to be able to go and hang out and see people that, through different businesses or you've been following and stuff. But yeah, there's a vast difference in attendee versus display, because I ran into Roman with Shinobletown, and his booth I was like half the size of a normal 10 by 10. It was like 10 by 5. Like it was small, but even for like that amount of space, he still probably paid a ton of money just to show. So yeah, it was, I think it's one of those misunderstanding things, especially when you start lopping in how many team members, like the Jackson Ampworks audio full tone crew, they had like 7 or 8 people there. So like 7 or 8 guys going to NAMM for a whole week, like, pricing and everything. So yeah, it was a very cool experience to get to go.
Yeah. I think again, to reiterate, as somebody who's going as a spectator, I think that it's if you're interested in equipment and musical gear companies and fans of a lot of these artists, or if you're just somebody that lives someplace outside of the United States, or you live someplace where it's cold and miserable and you can come to California for a week or half a week and get to experience some nice weather and get to immerse yourself in tone, of course, that's a great excuse to be able to go to the show.
Yeah.
And I think that in some ways the show has become more about that and less about its original intent. And I just and I don't think that that's a problem. I only think it's a problem in that NAMM, I think, is fundamentally dishonest with the people that actually create the opportunity for NAMM to even be able to make those sorts of decisions, which are the people that are exhibiting. And if you're paying $20,000 to be there in a 10 by 10, like when you're talking about all of the hidden costs and things associated with demonstrating, and potentially maybe not even talking about hotel expenses for you and your staff opportunity costs that are lost as presumably your whole production is not happening while you're gone, and that there's also sort of like a kind of regroup that occurs for maybe the next week after the show. I think that the format is really disrespectful to them because it's no longer a trade show. I think that it is completely it's a guitar show. Because there's very little trade that occurs, and this was kind of something that I noticed, I think, more poignantly as the years went on, and not because things changed necessarily, but just because I think in the beginning when I started showing at NAMM in 2011, I didn't know what I didn't know. It was a new brand, and I thought the expectation is that you come to this show, and this was sort of a prerequisite to being in business, in this industry. And I think as I got closer to having been in business for 10 years, I realized that this is really just pageantry. It's just a dog and pony show, and it's completely divorced from what the actuality is. And that's not to say that there isn't any commerce that occurs, but I would say the meaningful relationships that you have are completely satisfied through email and whatever marketing that you're already doing as a brand, because there's just no way that any prospective dealer can come to your booth and really understand your brand. Like if this is the first time they're ever hearing of you, and to understand the qualities of your products. There may be some companies that are willing to sort of speculate, and like try out something of yours, but it's not like they're going to be putting in a $20,000 PO, as a consequence of meeting you at an NAMM show. Because I think that now there are so many brands, and I'm speaking mostly on the side of pedals, there's so many brands that are coming in and out every single week that it's too difficult for a dealership to be able to create content for you anymore. Like it used to be in the days of, let's say, Pro Guitar Shop, where if you got into Pro Guitar Shop, it was a great thing because they would create a whole campaign around your brand and your product releases.
Yeah.
But now I think there are too many brands where no dealer can realistically do that. And what they're looking to do is sort of take whatever infrastructure you have and marketing that you have and be able to piggyback on that and be able to use that to disseminate to their customers. And so, for example, it's really easy to sell a JHS pedal, or it's really easy to sell a Wampler pedal because they've created an infrastructure through YouTube and social media where everybody's aware of their releases because they've got such a great mouthpiece to be able to say that they've released something and that they're going to get a lot of eyes on. But if you're, brand XYZ from Singapore and you've got 2,500 Instagram followers and you just started your YouTube channel and you're at the NAMM show, like there's nothing there for the dealer to be able to leverage to their customers. So it just has to happen that they just like what it is that you're doing, or there's something incredibly unique. That doesn't always mean that they're finding the right brands or the best brands for their customer. They're looking for primarily low-hanging fruit. And the other thing I'll say before I turn it back to you, because I know that this is long-winded, is that the quality of the attendee at NAMM again, because this is supposed to be a trade show, it is still called a trade show, so it should mean that the people that are put first are the people that are exhibiting. The priority should be the exhibitor. It's not a trade show anymore because their concern has always been, in the time that I've been going since 2011, has always been about attendance. Because they can conflate attendance with the efficacy of the show.
Yeah.
And so you end up getting a really diluted group that's in the trade show that's not there for the purposes of trade. They're there for the purposes of either their social media influencers or aspire social media influencers that want to create content there, which is great for them. I don't think necessarily great for the vendors necessarily in a meaningful way. Or they're just people that want to be sort of industry insiders. Maybe they're friends with somebody who owns an amp company or somebody who has, a NAMM membership, and they're able to get into the show that way. And so pre-pandemic, they were always just talking about these amazing numbers that they were putting out that were like, new records for NAMM. And from a exhibitor standpoint, I was seeing, we had a crowded booth, and we always did. Yeah. They weren't people that could buy anything. They weren't people that could put in a purchase order with your brand. And that's not to say that I don't appreciate relationships, because I think that that's really all NAMM can do now, is just help you congregate with people that you might only see once or twice a year, and you're in the social aspect is the thing that's most redeeming. Yeah. But the business aspect of it, I think, is completely eroded. And if you're spending that kind of money and you're going for that amount of time, and the opportunity cost that you leave behind when you go to show at an NAMM show, you got to be able to show 3 or 4x return on investment. And if it's costing you $20,000, that means that you're having to sell, at say boutique pedal prices, and considering the cost, you're having to sell like 600 pedals, just from the show that you wouldn't already have sold if you had just stayed and continued with your marketing campaign and, maybe offered some NAMM specials to your dealers, or something like that. And so that's really difficult to prove. And if only, let's say, 5% of the people that are at your booth at a given year are people that have decision-making power at a various dealership or distributorship, that sucks. That sucks for you, because that means that they're just putting bodies in there because they want the attendance. And you can see this dwindling. The fact that there was no basement, that hurts exhibitors in two ways. One, it was less expensive to show down there. And secondly, it's a way to give the illusion that there is a bigger NAMM show than there is, because it's just like if you move from a 3-bedroom to a 2-bedroom, your house is going to feel a lot more crowded. and so they ostensibly did that. And I think when you see Gibson not showing, Fender not showing, PRS not showing, Gibson not showing, or I think I said Gibson, but anyway,
Duesenberg, all of them,
Well, and I mean, and Duesenberg is not even a big company comparatively to those guys. And so I think that you're seeing that these brands that historically would never be left out of a NAMM show are determining that it's better to release the 70th anniversary Strat on YouTube and all these other social media mediums than to do a campaign in person at the show. There's just not value in that for them anymore. And so I think more and more people are seeing the writing on the wall. And my hope is that if NAMM really wants to reverse this, that they will move the show to being vendor-centric again. Because from my perspective, it was moving further and further away from that each year, because it was becoming more expensive, and the value, the reciprocity from NAMM in terms of the type of attendee that it was delivering was worse and worse. And I just don't think they can compete with, YouTube and stuff like that. Like, there's no chance that if I went to NAMM that I could get 1.5 to 2 million viewers on that were guitar interested people on my products. But YouTube can do that. They can do that for us, every month. And so I'm not I just don't see. I don't see where if it's just about getting products in front of people and showing it off. I just don't see where the value is.
Yeah. Well, and there was a couple of things I didn't notice this, because the last time I was at NAMM was 2015. I didn't have the chance to walk around to really, I would see other booths when I'm standing at our booth, but it wasn't like what I did where I took an entire day and walked around. And I captured some video and stuff while I was there and put together a little YouTube video of just like stuff that I saw. But what I noticed a lot, and it was actually one of those things, I think that I think it was a negative side to the booth, not to the booth, but to the attendees, is that so many people, and I understand as a musician, but like so many people were bringing their own Strats and they were carrying their guitars around to try out that Wampler pedal that was at this booth or that overdrive. And the problem with that is then the booth, the people working, the company can't go, all right, man, hey, they can't touch your guitar and take it away or whatever, but they can't be like, hey, man, it's been 15 minutes and you've been on this reverb pedal for the Poly. Like the Poly company was there, though they do the Bebo and stuff, but they just came out with the new reverb, like stuff like that. Like they can't like show it to you in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and then like you be done. They just kind of have to let you sit. Like I was at the Jackson audio booth because I know the guys and I've been talking to them, and I would say the 15, 20 minutes I was there, this one guy was on the same board with them the whole time. And I was like, I know I played your stuff. I just wanted to get a little video with it, but I guess I'll come back later. And I came back and he was still on it. So the one guy was on a demo rig for like 40 minutes, and then he took his guitar and he put it in his backpack, and then he put it on his back and walked away. And that was surprising. Like,
well, that
how
just
many
seems maybe more of a logistical issue with Jackson.
Yeah.
Like maybe
a lot of people
they don't know
did
how
that.
to say, but they don't. Like if there was somebody that was taking over, I think that you just have to be able to say, hey, like we really appreciate you being here. And we got a couple other people waiting to check this out. So can we, can you take a couple more minutes, wrap up, and then if you want to come back later, we'd love to have you.
Yeah, well, and they were all the headphone stuff too.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a graceful way, and they had the headphones thing, so I think it wasn't as much of a distraction. And there wasn't anyone besides me that was wanting to do it right at that point, so it wasn't like a huge deal. Excuse me. But what I mean is, like, there's this one company. They had like, I gotta say, they had 20 different brands. It felt like they were just like a reseller. I don't know if the company, they had like Walrus stuff, Brown Amplification was there one day. Like all these companies were kind of like just like bringing their stuff. So there was like 30 different boards sitting around this huge thing, and everyone could test and play on. And the one thing I kept seeing consistently is everything was kind of the same. That was kind of my negative, like, downside to the trip is all the, they are all pedals, they're all amps and stuff. Like, there wasn't, because I kept getting asked by some of my friends, oh, hey, is there anything cool? That was the hard thing, is that there wasn't anything, like, amazing. Game Changer had those really new, unique pedals that they came out with those jumper cable cord things or whatever, which looked cool. Bad Cat coming out with all these high gain amps and stuff, and Rev coming out with these some new amps and stuff. Like a lot of those booths were kicking, but all the other booths, it was kind of like just the same thing over and over. So I think that was the interesting. I would be so curious to know or to see if NAMM even allows like those vendors to have an option for someone to like try the pedal and just like check out on an iPad. Like not physically buy the pedal there, but like can buy it from the company's website and it'd be shipped. Because I know like...
Yeah, I'm sure they could do that. I mean, I think the reason why they don't do sales on the showroom floor is that there was theft and there wasn't really a way for them to regulate it. Like if somebody brings in a guitar, I don't know how it is now, but it used to be if like, let's say somebody like the individual you were speaking of at the Jackson audio booth, if they wanted to bring in a guitar, typically a vendor... had to check them out, like at the door to verify that it was their instrument, or something like that. But yeah, I'm sure that if you were somebody who was motivated, to try to make a criminal enterprise out of, lifting stuff out of NAMM, I'm sure that it's possible. But I think that's mostly why there isn't any purchasing on the showroom floor.
That makes sense.
It is due to that, but I don't think there would be anything that would restrict you from buying something on the show
online
for having it drop shipped. Excuse me.
Yeah,
having drop shipped to you.
I had the guys at A3 Pedals, so I have a lot of their volume pedals. I have it right here. they surprised me with a custom white volume pedal,
This
and
was made by
they
Mr. 3.
Mr. Three. This is him indeed, and I met him too. They had talked about just getting in and connecting, and they surprised me with it, which was great. I didn't think they were gonna have it, and I had to get like a green slip. So when I left, I had to show them proof that like I didn't steal this. So I get what you're saying. But yeah, I would say like, the whole show and stuff. I did it in a day, and I was fine because I was in my section. I went over to the DJ section for about 2 seconds because I wanted to go see the guys over at Ultimate Ears and 64 Audio and a few of those guys. But like if those sections don't pertain to you, like they had a whole like audio interface, radial, section in a different area. They did really good with dividing up where people were. Stringjoy was there. Like I saw a lot of those guys and stuff. But they did a really good job on separating like where people were categorized, and they kind of spaced it out really nicely. But yeah, no, it was from my first experience back in 15 when it felt like it was just nonstop, kind of that theme park feeling where everyone was just like really close to each other. And me, I'm a huge introvert, so I do not like a lot of crowds of people. So like going and it being a little more spread out. Saturday also was a little more chaotic because that's when a lot of these artists were signing stuff, which is so funny to listen.
Did you do a signing booth, Brian?
I did not. I did not. No way. No. It was nice to run into some friends that I did recognize and get to talk to. I was looking for your signing booth though, yours and Grant's. But
maybe next year we'll just have a 10x10 booth, which is just a signing booth that one or two people come to a day.
We'll talk about tuning sweetening.
Yeah.
And but
our sweet and tuning seminar.
Sweet and tuning. Actual sweet and tuning, yeah. But like what was I gonna say? So I did it in a day, and it was nice. And then I kind of went back the second day just because just to kind of see if I missed anything. But it was one of those things that I already saw 90% of the stuff through the companies that I liked through social media. So even before I left, I already knew, I already knew Full Tone. I already knew about Bad Cat. I already knew about Duesenberg. I already knew about Boss. Like I knew about everything before I even went. Before the show even started, people were already posting. So it was definitely one of those like, it makes sense why a lot of these companies aren't there, why Fender's not there.
Yeah, like JHS wasn't there, were they?
They haven't been there for a couple of years. Like even Waller's, their COO or one of their guys reached out to me about doing some kind of a board for them. And I was like, oh, cool. I would love to talk to you guys at NAMM. And he's like, we're actually not going this year because they would go every year. And like, they were really popular last year. They did the game where like you drop the dice and it goes down like these like pegs, and whichever slot it lines up in, like you win like that t-shirt or that sticker, or one of them was a pedal. So like, there's all these, like they did stuff like that last year. So like, I remember it because I saw it on Instagram and it was a huge thing. Their booth was always hopping, but like they weren't there. I think I saw them walking around.
I mean, sometimes
so hard.
Sometimes like our distributor for most of our US, not all of our US, but most of our US is Hal Leonard, the sheet music company.
Yeah.
And they distribute Walrus and others, so they'll have like a board or something like that and have some of your like wares to show dealers, but it's not the same as like a regular booth. But anyway, I think we have a few more thoughts to go through, but maybe we'll talk about a few more sponsors that make the podcast possible.
For sure.
I'll turn it over to you, Brian.
Thank you. Yeah. So our final three sponsors are going to be the guys over at monocreators.com. They have a code for 10% off. It's Chairmen, CHAIRMEN. Mono is great for their soft cases, their gig bags, their dual cases. They just recently released new power supply units. Mason, I'm pretty sure we've talked about that. You've seen them and love them, and Mono just makes all around great quality stuff. They have angled boards, they have some carbon fiber flat boards. They make a ton of great stuff, travel bags and everything. You won't be disappointed. If you're looking for high quality stuff, Mono is the way to go. So go to monocreators.com and use the code Chairmen, CHAIRMEN, for 10% off. Next are going to be the guys over at Stringjoy, which I did see them at NAMM, which was really cool.
You met Mr. Joy himself?
I did. I met Mr. String and then Mr. Joy. They were great, and they have a code for BOARDS for 10% off. Great strings. They have a subscription-based platform, so depending on how many packs of strings that you need in a month, these guys can help supply those strings to get them to you, so you're never without strings if you're breaking strings. If you like to constantly, have a fresh pair of strings. So check them out at stringjoy.com and use the code BOARDS. Final is going to be the guys over at Besttronics or BTPA.com. I was just on a phone call with Brad literally yesterday. And I feel like I say this every time, but it's honestly true. I'm pretty much on a phone call with Brad like 3 times a week getting stuff. And this time it happened to be the D-series connector Nutric jack socket covers that go on the back of like panel stuff for racks.
Oh yeah, the little prophylactic that you have to cut. You have to cut the hole for the cable.
Exactly. Yeah, I needed a PowerCon one, and I just said, "Hey, I need this type of cover," and he instantly had a link for me. He had one for the audio
that's
stuff.
The NPC 2321. Yeah, he like knows all these part numbers.
He always knows, and that's the great thing is I need it by Friday. So I called him and he said, "Got it." Put in the order in. I had the invoice within an hour. Paid it. He already shipped it. So those guys simply are the best. They really are the best. Pun intended. So go over to btpa.com. Use the code DutchHairs DACHARS for 10% off. They have everything. Go check them out. So yeah, I would say, first off, thank you, sponsors. You guys are amazing. And it was cool to get to run into a couple of the sponsors at NAMM to see them. I think also the one thing I realized is going to NAMM is when you start talking to someone at a booth and you start telling them like who you are, what you do. Like I would go on a big spiel about rig building or podcast or something, and you could see their eyes just kind of like get all like wide, and I was like, I build rigs or something, and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Like that was like because they are topped out on information.
They didn't ask you if you built paddle boards.
They didn't.
Like,
no,
wait,
that was
you
just
build paddle boards?
That was just my Uncle Ken. So he's the only one that thinks I build paddle boards. So Uncle Ken, nope, I do not do recreational water sports. But I would say, to summarize everything, and I said it in the video I did, and I'll link the video. We'll link the video here. It was just a quick little recap. There's two routes. From a manufacturer route, I'm not even a manufacturer, but I have had the opportunity to go with a company in the past. There's so many pros and cons to weigh, where I was seeing booths there where it was literally just one person, like Roman with Chernobyl was there, or the guy with Polly. I'm pretty sure he's the only one there, was the only person there, because it's so expensive that like you have to kind of weigh, your pros and cons to it. I mean, I got a pizza slice for lunch and it was like $13. And I was just like,
that pizza? Was it?
It was not good. It
wasn't $13 pizza.
It was like 7-Eleven pizza. Like it was not good, but that's what they had. So stuff like that, it starts to add up, and from a business standpoint, of having to pay for all your employees and having to pay for a hotel. My rental got messed up, so I ended up having to lift everywhere. That got very expensive very quickly. It was like, hey, come meet us here to go do. I was going to meet the guys over at Worship Tutorials. They're like, hey, we're going to go get ice cream. Meet us here. And I'm like, guys, that's like a $35 ice cream cone. I don't know if I can pay $35 for just a ice cream. Like one of those, like that's because there's just so much stuff. So like there's all these pros and cons away from a business. From a attendee, you know, there's less overhead because you're not paying thousands of dollars for a booth. You're not paying thousands of dollars to bring people with you unless your family all wants to go or whatever. My wife did not want to go, so it was just me. But
She didn't want to go to Disneyland?
Disney. She did. She wanted to go to Disneyland, which I did go on Sunday by myself. So I got to go there, which was great. So I just topped off all that walking with more walking. And I said it before in the video, and I'm going to try to go next year early to kind of do some of these, like meet up and hang out with some of these people to network. But like, it's not something you need to go Monday through Sunday for, or Wednesday through Monday for, like every single day. There's not like, I feel like once you've walked the floor and then maybe, you know, you walk the floor, walk down on the aisle, see what you like, and you go back and you try some of those things. You know, you don't have to stop at every single booth. You can, but I just think like realistically, you can go and do, you know, you can go and see the cool new things, or you can watch it on social media. You can talk to some people, you know, get some whatever, you know, be introduced into, you know, some of the companies. But like aside from that, like I would not go with the expectation of being wowed by every single thing that comes out, because a lot of the stuff it's just the same thing, just that different companies did it. You know, it's like, oh, it's their way of doing a high gain amp. Oh, this is their way of doing a high gain amp. Like it's just one of those, and that's the thing with the music industry. There's just so much stuff. So, you know, weighing the pros and cons, I do think it was a lot calmer this year though. Like it was a lot more chill. There wasn't as, they're gonna say probably there's a lot of people, but Saturday and Sunday, you would see a lot more badges with green on them. So you had like the vendor badge, and then the like guest badge or the artist badges like was like a yellow. Mine was a yellow one from Neural, but you saw all these green badges, and they were all like, you know, a lot of teenagers and a lot of these guys with green badges, and they were all like public attendee type of badges. So I don't know what the you know, the ending number of people that were there. It was definitely smaller than what I've ever experienced. But yeah, so that's kind of my take on NAMM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how it evolves over time. You know, again, I think as you mentioned, I think the most redeeming aspect of NAMM is social. And it's an opportunity to see people that you know, in the olden days might have only seen once or twice a year, you know, presuming that Nashville was still happening and that you were able to go to that show. But I think that outside of that, and I think that that's where NAMM's most vehement defenders kind of come into place. Is when they're protecting the social aspect or the fact that they get to be an industry insider for a certain number of weeks until whatever the products were that were talked about NAMM launched to the public.
Yeah.
And so I can see where to some of those people, you know, the idea of I don't know, negative commentary on NAMM might be threatening. I don't know that many vendors, you know, exhibitors that are reverent of NAMM. I think a lot of them feel an obligation, or their companies have been doing it for so long that it's part of their budget, or as I mentioned, like it's an opportunity to leave, you know, -30 Minnesota for a week to come to sunny California. And so, and there are a lot of, or you're coming from another country where, you don't often get the opportunity to leave,
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
I could understand where this is an exciting time, for you to be able to kind of take a vacation on the business, so to speak.
Yeah.
And I think that's totally fine. Like I have no objection to that. I just think that being realistic about what the show offers versus what other avenues offer to market your products, whether you're talking about social media advertisements, whether you're talking about YouTube, whether you're talking about Google ads or trackable SEO stuff.
Yeah.
Like NAMM really can't compete with that. And if you're a new pedal business, and this is getting into like business advice, which it's not what this podcast is about necessarily, but I'd feel obligated to say that anybody who's out there who's starting a pedal business, I would not emphasize NAMM as a viable place. I think you would do much better by developing a social media presence through content, through ads, through other marketing endeavors where you can track how much you've spent to how much it's returned. And NAMM is sort of speculative in the same way that a magazine ad is speculative. Like, sure, you're there and you see the advertisement in the magazine, or you see the person in the booth, but you don't really know if that's a ball or a strike. Because there's no information that's coming back to you that's actually telling you how many butts are in seats, like how many people are actually buying the product as a consequence of that. And with the digital aspect of, advertisement, you can very well see exactly how that is panning out. And you get a clear sense of what people actually respond to that provokes them to make a purchase. And so you start to get to know your customer and what they respond to. And and I think that if you're in the embryonic stage and you're like, I have $20,000 to drop, do I want to put it in the NAMM show or do I want to put it in advertisement? Do put it in digital advertisements that you can track. Because it's just not, NAMM, it can't do that for you anymore. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, NAMM could do that for you. It can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that's what our store manager was saying. Like 20 years ago, like he would go and he's like, I remember I would go and I would put my entire order in for the year there, and I would buy all the pedal, put in my whole order, or I wouldn't be able to see it on. He was like, I wouldn't be able to see it on social media or anything. So then I would see it at the show, and then 2 months later or something, the order would arrive. So like I get that whole aspect of how I think it's a little stuck in some of the ways it's done things. I think there are things that it could significantly do better to showcase some stuff. But yeah, no, it was a fun time. It was great to see people. It was, I always tell people, just like realistically think about, the pros and cons, and your idea about getting out of your cold state or wherever you are and going for a little vacation. I think that's a great idea. Like I went from Texas being 20 degrees and rainy to California.
I might be, if I were living in North Dakota right now, I might be way more motivated to go to the show. Even
Absolutely.
If it,
Which is funny too, is going there and it being 61 degrees. People, the hotel people are like, it's chilly today, and I'm like, no, it's not. That's beautiful weather.
You're wearing your shorts and t-shirt.
I was. I had a sweatshirt on, which I actually felt like I got hot, so I took it off. But yeah, no, it was the whole environment is cool and everything. But yeah, so I would say to summarize everything, just like. It's going to be interesting to see the next year. I was invited back to do like a panel thing, which would be fun. But yeah, it was great. It was a good experience. But I think unless you have anything else to say,
No,
pretty much
I'm just
summarized.
curious about people's thoughts on this. Now, I understand that most of you who are watching are probably coming at this not from an exhibitor standpoint, but from an attendee standpoint. But I'm curious if any of this stuff, that we're sharing or that I'm sharing about it has any sort of resonance with you, or if there's an unspoken sort of value that maybe I've overlooked in your opinion. I'd like to hear from you, what do you think that might be? And of course, if you're listening to this, you can come over to YouTube and leave that commentary where you can see an enriched version with Brian and I's faces. Until next time, we will leave you with these thoughts about NAMM, and we will see you next week.
All right. See you guys.